Eddie Hill's second-round victory, and when that breaks, you get some real expensive parts, especially the push rod itself. Now, the push rod is supposed to be straight. Well, there's what it looks like now. As a result of this, Fuzzy Carter and the crew are overworking on the engine. They have to repair the rocker arm assembly on the left bank of the engine and get it put back together before they fire up for the semi-final challenge.
And a challenge they are up against, none other than Darrell Gwynn. Right now, it's funny car time. Round number 2, Bruce Larson, the big story this year. He leads the Winston points against Ed McCullough, who has got his combination together. Maynard Yingst, the crew chief on the Larson car, a man who, oddly enough, came out of modified and sprint car racing in the Northeast and has fallen in love with what they call sport racing, drag racing.
And he will face the defending U.S. Nationals funny car champion from Hemet, California, Ed McCullough, who has 2 victories so far this season. Of course, the crew chief there is Bernie FEDDERLY. They come up against the current points leader, that's Bruce Larson, out of Dauphin, Pennsylvania, with 4 victories so far this year. And you've already been introduced to his crew chief, Maynard Yingst, who keeps track of that car on the line and turns the wrenches along with the crew.
Anyone who thought that Bruce Larson was a fluke, including myself at the beginning of the year, can certainly take notice that he is definitely in this hunt and keeps getting stronger with every round.
Well, he better be strong. Ed McCullough with a brilliant start. McCullough nailed Larson on the lights, but Larson powers right by. 5:32 wins it to a 5:46.
So he's taking the near lane once again is Mike Dunn, as he is ready to face Tony McCallum.
And to no one's surprise, Mike Dunn has top speed of the U.S. Nationals for the funny car breed at 278 miles per hour, a car with a huge top-end charge. They're trying to find some elapsed time. Now, he's up against Tony McCallum, a young driver with a very young crew chief who qualified in the 15th spot. A real credit to Wayne Dupuy, who cruised his car out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, qualified at 5:53. Up against round number 1, that young team ran into John Force, a veteran from Yorba, California, with one of the big names in the toolbox department, Austin Goyle working for it. And this was that first-round confrontation. Tony McCallum in the near lane, John Force in the far lane, and we rode with John Force.
You know, Steve, everybody's always asked me, what does it feel like? This is the closest thing I can tell you that it feels like to ride one of these cars.
Well, John Force knew he had lost traction, and he watched Tony McCallum streak by.
So with that victory in round number 1, it set up this fight with Ontario, California's Mike Dunn. 2 victories to his credit this year, in no small part due to the work of his crew chief, Gary Slusser.
Certainly 2 of the most beautiful funny cars you will ever see. Mike Dunn, near lane, Tony McCallum in the far lane, both drivers out of Southern California. Beautiful start. McCallum has problems. Mike Dunn. 5:35. That puts him right in the program with the best of them. 278 miles per hour. Another tremendous top.
The running, he never lets down. Still spending time for a few photographs and autographs with the race fans. Now, not long ago, the Diamond P cameras spent some time at home with this most versatile driver.
The baby dipped on me, hooked the nose, and what a ride. Yeah, 6 o'clock, my wife, we're trying to induce labor right now. She's overdue, and I got to get home since I hugged this crew. And I knew I cut a light, and the brain quit. Wait a minute.
Absolutely. John Force is a one-off. Okay, here we go. Round 2 of funny car eliminations continuing, and there is the man who has made the headline so far here at the U.S. Nationals. Don Prudhomme, his Pontiac-bodied automobile, the all-time quickest run ever seen in the breed at 5.17 seconds.
And Steve, here on the line, it's Buster Couch, who has run the Christmas tree, the official starter for all of the U.S. Nationals, all the way back to 1963. In fact, he goes back to when they used to use the flags to get them off of the line.
And don't let that smile fool you. Buster Couch takes no prisoners on the starting line. You play by his rules. Scott KALITTA knows that very well. Out of Ypsilanti, Michigan, second-generation drag racer. And his crew chief, who else but the first-generation Connie KALITTA. They qualified at 5:47. And talk about your tough draws in round number 2. It will be KALITTA against the 4-time Winston champ Don Prudhomme and his crew chief Mike KLOEBER. Now, yesterday afternoon, in a race within a race, it was happier times for John Force. He faced off with Don Prudhomme in the final of the Big Bud Shootout. The 8 best funny cars in the land had been narrowed down to these 2 cars. Force had a good start, but Prudhomme, better performance, as you see through the 4th left-hand side window. Don Prudhomme clocked a 5.19 seconds and took up $50,000. He got out of his car and immediately walked to Wally Parks, the founder and chairman of the board of the National Heart Rate Association. It was a nice moment.
So buoyed by that victory in the Big Bud Shootout, here is Don Prudhomme, the #1 qualifier in funny car round number 2 against Scott KALITTA. Prudhomme, like most of the competitors, has chosen that near lane.
And for good reason, too. Look at KALITTA. Smoke the tires immediately.
And look at Prudhomme, 526, 272 miles per hour, continuing his incredible performance. Let's go to the starting lineup.
That will determine who will face Bruce Larson in the semifinal round. Will it be Chuck Etchells or Tom Hoover? Hoover snuck into this round at the last minute as a 16th qualifier. Etchells is number 12. Now, let's go to the far end.
Like all of the funny car drivers and crews, I am at a loss for words to describe Don Prudhomme's performance. I hope you've got something to say. A 526.
Well, it's great. Yeah, we just need to keep it running consistent, Steve. Things have been pretty good so far.
Whoa, pretty good.
We like to set that national record, but we're not stepping on it too hard. We're just trying to play it cool.
Did you back it down after yesterday's 17 and 19?
Yes, we really have to. It's just really hard on the drivetrain and everything, so we're just trying to nurse it along until we really need it.
See you in the summer.
Thank you.
So Don Prudhomme walks carefully toward what may be another U.S. Nationals victory. In the meantime, up at the starting line, Tom Hoover brings the machine back in the lanes. He qualified number 16, and he made it to this round as a result of a fascinating confrontation in round number 1.
Indeed, Paul. It was Tom Hoover, Maple Grove, Minnesota. The engine's under the hood of his funny car built by his 80-year-old father, George Hoover. What a story that is, and what a story this was. Hoover was up against Kenny Bernstein, the 4-time and reigning Winston champ from Dallas, Texas. He and his crew chief, Dale Armstrong, hoped to be the first team to win 5 funny car titles, eclipsing Don Prudhomme, who likewise has 4. But earlier today, with Bernstein in the near lane, Hoover in the far lane, that was not to be. Kenny had the advantage, suddenly smoked the tires. I doubt that they thought Hoover was capable of a 542. He indeed was. Kenny Bernstein going out round number 1 here, and Larson progressing through the field. Well, that could be catastrophic to his chances. Chuck Etchells, however, on the brighter side, is enjoying his finest drag racing weekend ever. The driver from Connecticut with longtime veteran Paul Smith as the crew chief, qualified number 12 at 547, and now will match wheels with Tom Hoover.
Tom Hoover on the near side, that lane that has held up so well throughout the competition.
It's a good start. Hoover smokes the tires and then goes into a power wheel stand. Chuck Etchells powers his way to a 555, 266 mile per hour victory. He'll go to the semifinals, the furthest he has ever been in NHRA national event competition. And in fact, that does set up the semifinals. Bruce Larson will have lane choice over Chuck Etchells, and the other half of the semis will find Don Prudhomme, who has lane choice over the entire field. He'll be up against the man with top speed, Mike Dunn.
In the meantime, back in the Top Fuel pits, Darrell Gwynn's crew works on his car as they are ready for their fight against Eddie Hill in the Top Fuel semifinal. Meet Steve YINGST, young son of Maynard YINGST. He's not at all concerned with the competition of the day, but his dad doing what he does best, working on the clutch in Bruce Larson's machine as they prepare for their semifinal round confrontation. And down the way at Don Prudhomme's pit, Steve Evans is with another heavyweight for motorsports.
We'll talk about your special guest. Look who I found. 4-time Indy champ A.J. Foyt. The last time I saw you around the drags, I think, was 20 years ago.
That's probably right. 20 years ago right here. It's the day after we come back from DuPuy.
My, how it's changed.
It really has. I mean, it's amazing, and the technology when these cars and beautiful cars, and actually as fast as they run, still is safe. I think today they're a lot safer than they were 20 years ago.
Well, I'd have to agree with that. You know, there seems to be a thread now through all of motorsports. A sprint car driver was a sprint car driver. We're fans of each other's occupations.
Well, that's true. I mean, a lot of it, you know, it's just been so much different through the years that it's really hard to put it together. And just like I was out here, Art Crispin and, you know, Tom McEwen and, you know, like Prudhomme, I've been friends for years. And when he's around the Indy cars, May and that, he comes sees me. So we go see each other whenever we can. But like I say, it's great to be out here and look at some of the new cars, how beautiful they are.
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
AJ's right. It's not uncommon at the Indianapolis 500 to see Prudhomme standing over there in the pits. Well, we're ready for Pro Stock, round number 2.
Well, 25 years ago, around the time of A.J. Foyt's last visit here, the Top Fuel dragsters were running about the same performance as the Pro Stocks do now. Don Beverly from Chester, Virginia, and his Oldsmobile will meet up in this round with Butch Leo, long renowned for his starting line expertise out of Blackwick, Ohio. Leo with the Pontiac. Now, these are gasoline-burning automobiles. There's no fuel injection. They're big 4-barrel carburetors. They weigh 2,350 pounds. The engine limitation is 500 cubic inches. And the real research, development, and hard work for these teams happens in their race shops. They dyno these engines, mold them in, and come here and kind of run what they brought.
Beautiful start by Leo. Hasn't lost any of that starting line touch, but watch the horsepower on Beverly, motor right by him.
It is Don Beverly. What a thrill for him to beat Butch Leo with a 743 to Leo 749. They had equal horsepower on the top end. Both ran 185 miles per hour.
Pro Stock competition, some of the closest racing that you'll find in NHRA drag racing. Up on the line, Larry Morgan, who is having a great race weekend at the U.S. Nationals as he's ready to take on Gary Brown.
And what a force Oldsmobile has become in NHRA Pro Stock drag racing. In fact, last year they won the coveted Manufacturers Cup, and we have another pair of them here. Gary Brown from Buford, Georgia, also the owner of Atlanta Dragway, the scene of one of NHRA's national events, and Larry Morgan of Newark, Ohio. Boy, I'll tell you, he should be wearing even a broader smile than that, because yesterday, in the final round of the Mr. Gasket First Pro Stock Challenge, it was Larry Morgan against Warren Johnson. Morgan was in the near lane, on the line, $50,000 to the winner, and it was Larry Morgan. There was total jubilation on the starting line. Car owner Bob Pinella and crew from California celebrating certainly Larry Morgan's biggest victory in their Oldsmobile Pro Stock. And celebrating as well was Larry's 2-week-old baby, Nicholas James.
Of course, as they say, that was all yesterday. Larry Morgan is back with all that erased. Now it is Brown that he faces. Morgan to the near lane, Brown to the far side.
Oh, and Brown gambled in the far lane. Left way too soon. There's a red light on the Christmas tree. Automatic disqualification. The second car across the stripe has won here in the second round and heads for the semis. Larry Morgan still undefeated at the U.S. Nationals.
Larry Morgan really has become a factor in this Pro Stock racing. Wouldn't you agree, Steve?
Absolutely. He heads up their engine development as well as driving the car. Boy, here's a man who's won 4 races, Bruce Allen, in the Rare & Morrison Beretta. And up against Bruce will be one of the real crowd favorites because of the uniqueness of the automobile. The only Dodge Daytona in all of Pro Stock racing, Darrell Alderman. And you'll remember that they won the Gator Nationals back in March of this year, the first Dodge to do so in about a decade. But, Paul, if you look at the elapsed times recorded so far, you'd have to give the nod to this man, Bruce Allen.
Well, Allen does come into this event as the #1 qualifier. It's the Chevrolet matchup against Darrell Alderman's Daytona. And there is a large Chevrolet contingent here as well, pulling for Bruce Allen.
And Darrell Alderman, so many times, his whole shot at his way to victory, second only maybe to Butch Leo. It is Alderman away first. Alderman making a race out of this. He might win it. No. By a spoiler on the front bumper, it is Bruce Allen, 737 to Alderman, 744. But an advantage of 4 hundredths off the starting line made it almost a dead heat.
And Steve, here at the starting line, well, we may just be seeing history in the making. On board with Bob Glidden. If he scores the win today, it will be his 75th. Unprecedented. Here, though, he still has to get past Warren Johnson.
Well, anytime you race Warren Johnson these days, you've got to know you've got a serious competitor in the other lane, running better than he has in a couple of seasons. Anytime you race Bob Glidden at the U.S. Nationals, well, he's been in the finals 12 years in a row. That tells you something.
Shouldn't surprise me. He just lives down the road. He can drive home at night, live at home, work in his shop. It's a perfect place for him.
And I'll tell you, he dearly loves this race, as we all do. Warren Johnson in the near lane. He has been tough as of late, and he loves to pick on Bob Glidden. These two do not get along on or off the racetrack. You're in the Ford Probe automobile. Glidden keeping it perfectly straight. Rusty Glidden cheering him on along with his brother Billy. And it is Bob Glidden going to the semifinals. A 7:40 at 186 miles per hour and a beautiful starting line lead.
So Bob Glidden marches ahead. Will we see some history made here?